listen and listen good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure whatever they vaccinated them against, it wasn't enough.
It's the Cooper and Anthony Show.
One of our favorite guests is joining us, and for everyone that's been listening to us for like 11 years or longer, who were part of the Cooper Lawrence Show syndicated version, you know our next guest. He is one of our favorite guests. My favorite comedian. He is the host of the Daily Blast Live. It is comedian Al Jackson joining us today. Hello, my friend.
Yo, first of all, it's been too long. I miss you. I love you. This is like, what a crazy circumstance that we're talking about right now, which we're going to get to. But I just have to say, it's been a minute. I love it.
Yeah, I get the impression that you're so busy, so I feel like I can't bother him, can I? But this is a topic that I was like, I got to get your opinion. I just didn't want a comedian, because people contacted us and said, hey, can I come on your show and comment on Will Smith and Chris Rock? And I was like, let me see. If Al Jackson's not available, you can.
I appreciate it. It's like, I appreciate having a second to think about this. This has been, from when it happened to now, I feel like my thoughts on it have changed. Initially, what were your initial thoughts when you first heard, like, both of you guys, like, did you see it? Like, how did you see it? I saw the Australian feed on Twitter. And little fun fact, I toured in Australia a couple of times. And the second time I was there, I realized that the reason that we were able to get that Oscars unedited footage is that everything there is unedited, including like their Cops. Imagine watching Cops in America, but it was unedited. And that's what it's like. But it's like the middle of the day on after the news. And there is just a person that is suffering from a mental health issue, screaming the F word with a camera, and they don't edit anything. It's an interesting way to like kind of run your broadcast.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, on some level, it's like really honest. I like knowing that something isn't edited,
Yeah. I mean, do you think we're kind of headed for that? I mean, I think that there's some words that can't. I mean, you've been in broadcast a lot longer than I, so like I think that there's some words like any word that involves something sacred, a deity, the F-bomb, the C-bomb, the two big ones. I get that, but I don't know if people really care after that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you think an S-bomb would be bad on like a sitcom on a Thursday night at like 9:00? Do you think that would be bad, like by the public?
I think there's too many pearl clutchers out there that act like, oh, my word, my stars, that word. And then they turn around and they go, fuck you. I'm not cooking you anymore. Fucking macaroni and cheese, you little shits. You know what I mean? So I think that I think it's a lot of hypocrisy, but I think so the image is, I'm a mom. I can't say fuck, shit, piss, cunt. I can't say any of that stuff. You know what I mean? But the truth is they all do. Everybody does. It's just it's just words. It's just words.
I think it's different because you guys are in New York. I'm in the South. So in South Carolina, I don't think that works. But I think for people in New York and Chicago and LA, I think it does.
Obviously, so we're talking about what happened at the Oscars last night. And I guess, so my initial reaction when I saw Will Smith get up and punch Chris Rock, my initial reaction was, I mean, obviously I was shocked like everybody else because Chris Rock was looking at him like, oh, here he comes. He's going to do a bit. He didn't. That's the last thing in the world you would expect to have happen. But Chris Rock, that was the last thing he expected as well. You could tell by the shock on his face was really the big tell that he really didn't see it coming. But my first reaction, because I started immediately texting with some of my psychology friends, and we were like, yeah, that's exactly, there's Alec Baldwin. People are making jokes today, like, good thing he didn't say anything about Alec Baldwin's wife. But it's the same thing. And to just put on my like smarty pants hat for a second, it's called acquired situational narcissism. And people that are not normally narcissists then become narcissistic because they have years of people telling them they're better than everybody else. They're special. They don't need empathy because we'll take care of you. And if you see the world that Will Smith lives in, everyone's always like afraid. They walk on eggshells around him. They're afraid to say anything to him. So I feel like there's definitely a level of that narcissism. Like, do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that? So my initial reaction was, what an arrogant prick.
Yes, the narcissism it just in that room had to be out of control. And I feel like what I initially took from it after I realized that it was real was for the amount of narcissism that Will Smith had to get up there, the amount of restraint that Chris Rock had to keep himself, because we're forgetting that normally that doesn't end with one slap unless this is a duel in 1812. Usually, and what we could have seen, which would have been an even uglier scene, which is even hard to think about, is we could have had a fight on the Oscar stage between two men wearing $15,000 tuxedos. And what I think we saw in Will Smith was a man undergoing a mental health situation right in front of our eyes. I had a lot of time to think. And what I try and do is initially, I think we're all in the moment. Was that real? Did he punch him? Did he slap him? You get all the particulars. But as I pull the satellite camera back and I look at like the macro of what Will Smith has been lately, his acting hasn't dropped off at all. Obviously, the man just won an Oscar less than a few, yesterday, basically, whenever you're listening to this. But clearly his personal life is out of control. I said initially with the Red Table Talk with Jada, they've done an incredible job of bringing topics that no one was talking about to the forefront and kind of, as we were talking about earlier, in an unedited format. But what they did was they started airing everything. And there's a reason that no matter it's a figure of speech that transcends generations, transcends cultures, transcends countries. It's keep our business in this house. And their business was everywhere. Their bedroom business was everywhere.
Right.
Whatever situation they have with their marriage, adults are fine with. We understand a lot of people have situations. Very few people have what is quote unquote a nuclear family. And a lot of people, we've all realized that ain't the jam either.
No.
So whatever works for your family, awesome. But when you bring every little bit of your family's personal life to the world and you get the world's feedback, a lot of that feedback, especially on the internet, is going to be negative. He's been taking a lot of flack, for lack of a better word, with the situationship that she had with the much younger man that was a friend of her son's. And Will Smith took a lot of emasculating, shots towards him. And I think that built up over the course of years.
Right. And
I think feeling humiliated on the world stage is what broke him. And, I am not in any way condoning what he did. I thought it was reprehensible. I think we saw two men's careers hit a fork in the road. Because what do you do after this?
Right.
Maybe Chris Rock it'll be great material, but do you even want to do that? Because if you have a 10-minute bit on your next HBO special, which I'm sure he will, do you want to stoke these flames again?
How does he not talk about it, though? That's what comedians, you can't not talk about the elephant in the room. Otherwise, you're a shit comedian. So you have to at least bring it up. I mean, this is the thing that Kathy Griffin does so well. She talks about the stuff that happens to her. These are facts. So he can talk about it from his perspective. He doesn't have to bash Will and Jada anymore, which, we'll get into in a second, where I think they have history there. But I agree with all that. And it kind of also explains why reality show couples tend to break up, because they put their real life out there. And once it's fed back to them, it's fed back negatively. There's a microscope. They're seeing things that a lot of people pretend not to see. So that's why most reality show couples do break up. And that's what's happening here. I don't think Will and Jada are breaking up anytime soon, but I think you're right. I think that they have been hanging out all their dirty laundry for so long. And August, what's his face, coming out and be like, yeah, fuck Jada. That didn't help. It didn't help, because really it's none of our business.
Yeah, that's the thing. If somebody says, just this week, Amy Schumer came out and said that she suffers from a hair pulling. I guess is it a disease. I guess syndrome. I'm trying to use the proper words here. Amy's the homie. I've known her for a while.
Tricta something mania. Tricta. I forget. It has a.
Yeah, it does.
I have a PhD. I should know this, but yeah,
It's a trick to something.
It's a trick to something. Yeah.
Whatever you say, I'm like you have a doctorate, I believe.
Yeah.
But that's something where. Is that personal? Yes. But if I am a fan of Amy or I've never even heard of her, but just know she's a celebrity and I have that kind of syndrome or disease that's not really known about, not really spoken about, and I feel shame having it, having somebody bring that up, I have no problem with that. And I think that can be really helpful when somebody uses their platform to bring light to things. But when you're using your platform to talk about like what kind of a how much you guys are having sex and who's in your bedroom, I think it doesn't seem like it works. It doesn't seem like you said, Coop, I never put that together. It was such a great pull. And obviously, that world, but like there has to be something where the entire world having a comment on every interaction that you and your partner have. How could that work out well? And it's got to come out somewhere. And I think for us regular folks, that blow up doesn't happen at the Oscars. You know what it happens? At your wedding.
Right.
I got a problem with Anthony. It's been happening for a while. We haven't really said it. Now I got a couple drinks in me, and now all of a sudden it's and they hand me a microphone. And I've been to 3 weddings. One the groomsman's speech, he dropped 3 hard C-bombs.
Oh,
hammered. At, like people's grandmothers in the room. I saw another groom give a speech in which he proudly told everybody that he held out and held over a prenup over the bride's head until she signed 30 minutes before the wedding, because people are drunk and these emotions are wedged deep in there. That's why this comes out at family events and stuff like that, because these emotions tied to these people are now in the same room. There's history there. And there's alcohol there.
Right.
And that, in Cooper, I didn't expect this.
I go back to, it's a comedy routine. And where do we draw the line? Because you can't go on stage now and rip on somebody in the crowd because they're going to get up and come up and smack you. Is that where we are as a society with a comedian, where you're so scared to say anything on stage? Is comedy over?
It's not over, but I've had one person in anger enter the stage on me. There was a period. Yes, cool. And I don't know if it was such a.
You got to tell us this story.
Oh, good. I love podcasts. I'm like, we don't have time. Yes, we do. I was doing a show in a club that has not reopened since the pandemic, but it was one of my favorite clubs in Cincinnati, and it was the last show. And where the comedy club was located, it almost shared a wall with a local bar that was as somebody that I've been sober 2.5 years now, but. As somebody that used to drink, there are different kinds of bars, So if you see them walking through New York City, there's like hey, cute young people here, wear some heels and put on something cute. And this is the theme of this bar. And the bartenders wear suspenders. So, know, the drink's going to be $4 more than it should be. Like, it's like you got that vibe. And then you've got a bar that is for drinking, like drinking. And this was a drinking bar. And I think they've been overserved there. They come over to the comedy show, and it's so weird because they have a clock right in front of you as a comic. The audience can't see it, but I could see it. I was done. Coop, I'm already like, oh, what am I going to get? Should I eat before I go back to the hotel? Like, in my mind, the show's over. I said, I got to do my closer. And there was a couple, it was 2 top tables. In the middle, 2 top table in the front row. Like, I could have leaned over and shook her hand from the stage. Like, we were that close, like as close as 2 people could be. And I was at the end of my show, and I had mentioned something about being a teacher and having a degree in biology. And I mentioned it offhandedly, but it was a couple. This guy just yells, "Well, then talk about science." Like, I mean, the show's over, but it was like a very hostile, very like, "I don't believe you." He goes, "You said you have," and I mean, he's doing that drunk sway that like those things in front of used car dealerships have, just that like, you said you were a biologist, talk about science. And I was like, "Sir, that's a very vague, opaque topic to try and get into on a Friday night with 2 minutes to go." And long story short, he gets kicked out. And there wasn't even that much staff there anymore because the show was almost, it was like midnight. And so now I'm like, let's try and re-land the plane. Like, he's gone. Who cares? The drinking bar is right there. It'll be all good. And I go back into my last show for the second time. And the woman he was with, I'm assuming his wife, goes, "He said it because he's a dentist and he can say what he wants." And I was like, I didn't know dentists were rolling like that. I didn't know they could just say whatever they wanted. They like 89 Ice Cube and NWA. I'm like, I'm here for it. But it's like, she just said it so like, it was that kind of dismissive tone that people that have had a lot of money for a long time have. Where they're like, "We're down here slubbing it with you people down at the comedy club. You poor people that go to Kohl's. But let me tell you something. My husband's a dentist. Okay."
Right.
He can say, like, she had that kind of vibe. And without me even really saying anything back to her, and I'm embarrassed because I was sober, she moved on me so quick. She was out of her chair. And I know it's a podcast. I would say within an inch and a half of my face. Like, she was like the way you would be next to somebody on the subway.
Wow.
Like that close. Like, not even like airplane seat close. Like, we were touching each other. And I turned my body because I didn't, if you guys can picture this, when there's about to be like a goal kick in soccer, the guys will stand in front of the goalie and kind of cover up their private parts so they don't get hit. That's kind of what I did to her, but I rotated 180 degrees. So I just like turned my face away from her so she couldn't punch me or kick me or knee me. But I knew if I had any extremities going anywhere, like tried to extend my arms, like get away from me, the staff didn't come because I think they were probably back, cashing their checks or whatever. And a couple audience members came and got her and walked her out. But I mean, comedy clubs are, and I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but are very intimate. This isn't like a nightclub. And I know a lot of guys that run nightclubs, like they expect 4 fights a night. They're ready for it. They got, hey, we got to fight in the VIP. We got to fight outside. We got to fight in the alley. Who cares?
Right.
Fights all the time.
It's a nightclub.
Comedy clubs, sometimes if there's a big act there, there'll be a security guard or two. But usually your security guard is your biggest cook and your biggest waiter and one that can call the cops the fastest. Right. And that's kind of what it is. And I am very scared in this climate where you cannot say anything without, offending somebody. What if somebody offends you now in real life and that template is there now, Coop?
Right.
To like, hey, if somebody says something about your wife, go handle it.
On stage in front of everybody.
People like to act like that.
So you said you had some time to think about it throughout the day. How do you feel now? Do you feel different than when you first saw the smack? Do you feel different now?
I feel different in that I've thought more about Chris Rock. And one of the things that changed my mind, Anthony, or kind of shifted my paradigm a little bit, is watching Will Smith party at that Vanity Fair party. I'm like, hey, you got a lot of energy for somebody that just undid the work of a couple thousand people. Because unfortunately, Questlove, a member of the Roots, who, and this is only for like crazy hip hop heads, I bought the Roots' first album. It was called Organics. I don't even know if you can still get it. Like maybe it's on there. It was an old music. It was an old album that you could tell was made in somebody's basement. You can hear with better speakers now. You can hear like people talking in the background. It's really a beautiful thing. It's Imperfections. It's Organics with an X if you want to check it out. And the songs aren't very good because they're young, they're kids, but I was a kid listening to it too. And to see an artist like that come all the way up. I see Questlove in concert for the entirety of my adult life. And then to see him transform into somebody that can make this documentary about this event, which the irony is enough to kill us all, did not get the publicity that it should have gotten. Thus, he made this documentary that he won an Oscar for, but it was preempted because there was a slapping before it.
That's right.
So now Questlove loses his moment forever. And everybody after, especially after, but really, do you guys think that 6 months, a year, this will not still be known as the slap heard around the world Oscars? Or do you think with time people will start to recognize the other thing? I thought Amy Schumer's monologue was great. I thought there were so many good things.
No. Well, this will be forever. We're still talking about Kanye. We're still talking about Kanye interrupting Taylor Swift. I mean, that is so present in everybody's mind that it replaced our caring about Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt breaking up because of Angelina Jolie, which was the biggest thing on the planet. Like, we don't care about that anymore. I mean, to this day, it depends on whether you're a Kanye fan or a Kim fan or a Taylor Swift fan, where you put the snakes, when you're tweeting or posting about it, you know what I mean? Like, that is a thing. And a lot of my friends in the entertainment industry, they feel like that's what opened the door. The fact that Kanye got up on stage, felt the need and the absolute fucking narcissism to get up on a stage and think that he has the right to upstage this moment of this young new talent. Remember, Taylor Swift was just starting out. That was her first big thing. Like, that was her moment. And she gets not just interrupted, but then, like, it's such misogyny as well. The fact that he got up there, he was like, oh, that's adorable. I'm going to let you finish. But, Beyonce's album was the greatest ever. And, little white girl, go fuck yourself. I think that was the beginning of it, of the idea that celebrities are also not immune to the kind of things that happen to, like, you on a stage when you're performing. That's, no one's immune,
And they shouldn't be. That was a big, Biggie said it was all a dream. And that line has resonated throughout really our generation. I have friends now that have babies, and over the crib, I have friends that have that in neon letters over their crib. Because what Biggie said about coming from nothing to something resonated with so many people. And I don't understand why we so cavalierly take away somebody's moment that they've dreamed about, like in the bathroom mirror. This is why I'd say for my acceptance speech, if I'm the first queer woman of color to win for West Side Story, but you're holding your hairbrush, like, this is what I would say. And I point to my mom. And to have that moment taken, either literally, like, have it cut away from, or just having that memory stolen from the public conscious, because we only hold on to the biggest memory, and that will be the incident, the assault. He took away so much from so many people.
But that's why I say narcissism, because what do narcissists lack? And that's empathy. They feel like whatever's okay for them is fine. It's not okay for you. Like, if you asked Will Smith, hey, like a week ago or yesterday or 2 days ago, if you would have said to him, hey, at the Grammys, if somebody gets up and, decides to punch Adam Lambert while he's presenting something to the Foo Fighters, or they're on my mind because of Taylor Hawkins, but, would that be okay? No, of course it's not okay. Like, he gets that it's not okay. He's not a complete mental patient. But that's that acquired situational narcissism where I understand that it's not good for you. I can do whatever I want, but no, you can't. Mm-hmm. So I think also my opinion did change as I thought about it. And what I realized, I went back to 2016, and some of the things that Chris Rock said about Will Smith and Jada when he was hosting the Oscars were really harsh. He went after them hard then. So I think that Will Smith has been holding on to a lot of that ever since. Jada had boycotted the Oscars. I think it's because of the whole Oscars so white thing. I'm not 100% sure why she boycotted, but I think that's why. And Chris Rock said, oh, there's Will Smith, here without Jada, because she wasn't invited. That'd be like me being boycotted from Rihanna's panties. that he made that joke, and then he made a joke that Will Smith hasn't been nominated, but that's okay because he got $20 million for Wild Wild West, so it all evens out. So he has been kind of going after him. I think that Will Smith has had it in. I think there's some beef there.
He's a comedian. You give a little bit extra to a comedian that you can walk that line.
Not if you keep going after the same people over and over. It feels like bullying. I know that it's comedy, but if you keep going after, what's her face? Amy Schumer went after them. All night, people were going after Will and Jada. They were going after them all night. I think it just wore on him.
Because they were in the crowd and it was comedy.
Well, let me ask you this, Coop. Do you think that, and as a comic, I can say that you're going to go after the target that you think you have the most ammunition on, and that would be the target in which you know the most about, most likely. And the fact that they are putting so much stuff out there, if somebody's like, make fun of Tom Hanks, I'd be like, all right, let's get some Chet Hanks jokes going.
Of course.
But like, there's not a whole lot. I don't know what goes on in his bedroom. And it's just interesting that, because, this is it. I'm so glad we're having this conversation, especially a little bit later, because I've had time to process it. What I think about a lot is like when you talk about a couple that's very open. So I started thinking about when I've talked to swingers in the audience, when I've talked to swingers just as a lifestyle on a podcast, I've done shows, but that kind of stuff. They are the most taking a jokest people that there are. What are you going to say? And I'm not saying that they are swingers confirmed, but it does seem like there is some kind of openness going on, which, whatever, who cares? But if that kind of lifestyle is for you and you are fairly open with it as a regular person, you and me, okay. But when you get to an international fame level and you're kind of open with some different things,
the jokes weren't about their relationship. The jokes were about her alopecia.
Yeah, but do you think he knew that she had it?
No, he had no idea.
What do you think? Because I didn't.
She's been everywhere talking about it. She talked about it in her own show. She was on The View talking about it. I mean, she goes everywhere talking about it.
Watching The View.
That's what I'm thinking. Chris Rock probably was not aware. I'd be shocked if he knew that she had alopecia. I mean, I don't think he knew, because then that would really be kind of cruel. But I don't know. Like, I really think that the Academy should probably take away his Oscar. And the reason I'm saying that is, the only reason I'm saying this, because they made their own rule in 2017 that they finally came out with rules of behavior and code of conduct that they had never had before. That is the number one thing on their code of conduct. Violent behavior, any kind of triggering behavior, anything that is aggressive or assault, that is like number one on their list of code of conduct. He violated that. He absolutely, and he did it on international television. He did it publicly. He did it live. And you know what? If I was somebody at home who just got out of an abusive relationship, I'm triggered by that. I'm sitting there to watch the Oscars, to kind of like just think about someone else's life and these stupid celebrities and what are they wearing. And then there's something violent takes place and I'm brought back to the situation I'm in. So that's irresponsible, especially from a really woke world like, the Academy. They try and be so like, making sure everybody is safe. Well, I no longer feel safe because you allowed somebody to punch somebody and there was no repercussions. Like, I have a problem with that. And then returned to his seat, and then you gave him an Oscar, and people stood up and applauded him and gave him a standing ovation. You just sat there 2 seconds ago waving your hands in the air for the deaf person so that they would understand this is, instead of applauding. So obviously you're trying to be sensitive. You just saw somebody get punched in the face, and now you're standing up for that person.
And that's the whether it's Hollywood or the left, it does seem like there is a blind spot in morality when it comes to certain issues. That moment that you're talking about with Coda winning, first of all, his speech about his father. And again, we're talking about things that we missed. I lost my dad, and just like this speech, like I was not expecting the speech from Coda to like have me crying on the couch. But I was like, this is the best Oscars ever. Like, that brought something out of me, and I thought I loved it, and I thought it was just like such a human moment he had, and like for everybody to stand up and do the the hand clapping, through sign language. I thought that was super dope.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you know what, Coop? What you just said just completely makes sense. In that, does that wipe away that moment if these are the same people that will still stand and clap for a person that's just assaulted another man for literally doing his job?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to throw one more wrinkle in this for you. I'll give you one more wrinkle here. And this was my initial reaction that I didn't get a chance to say but now that we're talking about it, my initial reaction was, what a fucking misogynist. She can't take care of herself. She needs you to get up and protect her like she has no agency. That would have been a great opportunity for her the next day to go back on The View and to the Today Show and Good Morning America and be out there and be like, hey, I have alopecia. Here's how I feel about it. Here's my experience with it. Here's what I want to say to Chris Rock. But he robbed her of that opportunity. And I was like, I am so sick of that misogynist bullshit. You know what I mean? If Joe, my boyfriend, if he ever beats somebody up for me, for saying something, it's one thing if somebody is physical to me, then, step right in there and get in there, brother. Like, make it happen. But if someone says something to me and Joe steps up for me, he would never hear the end of it. Like, I can't take care of myself? Excuse me.
And especially, like you said, it was a situation in which your physical isn't being threatened. So now this is just a question of, like, principle and what you're going to let the world know you will and won't stand for. And, it was draped in misogyny, draped in just an incredible miscalculation in the gravity of the act that he was doing. I don't know if in real time he realized that he was forever changing the lives of him and the person that he was about to assault forever. This will be something that will be talked about 50 years. This will be talked about when they're running the footage of their death montage when they pass away. Mm-hmm. This will be a moment that is mentioned. And he made it so that he and Chris Rock's names are ironically forever linked. Yeah. So right. You clearly didn't like seemingly more than anybody else on the planet. You guys might as well, it should be like that Viagra commercial where you're sitting in the two bathtubs together. Like, y'all are together now. When one is mentioned, right. The other one will be mentioned for a long, long time. I don't know how much talking I would have to do. There's nothing that can be said that can undo this. There's nothing that can be said that will undo my kids having to watch their father be smacked on the highest stage in a $20,000 tux. It was a combination of everything that was wrong and what we're trying to avoid in one moment.
After all this, is your comedy going to change? Are you going to take out some things out of your show because you're afraid somebody's going to come smack you?
Like, has this opened the door for people hitting comedians? Like, right. Honestly, has it?
I think so. I think that we've seen with just people in power, a lot of people kind of imitate them. And when people see Will Smith do that next to his wife, for as much as some people will find that abhorrent and that cannot happen, and he needs to have his Oscar taken away, which I agree with. I think a lot of people looked at that and said, that's me. Hey, I don't care about the repercussions. You say something about my wife, it's going to be a problem. Oh, you're talking about my daughter? It's going to be a problem. Well, then we can't do comedy anymore because it's something affects everybody all the time with every single word. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that, like, we sit here and we worry about cancel culture and we worry about, defending art and making sure there's plenty of art in the school districts and funding that. But the only thing we do really is attack the arts. We don't attack really that nobody on Wall Street ever gets Me Too'd or attacked or canceled. None of these, like, corporate guys that I'm sure are not wonderful humans, all of them, they don't get attacked. It's really, we go after musicians and comics and people that are provocateurs and people that we almost pay to have a different take to stir the shit. The reason, right. Say what you want about Wendy Williams. I wasn't a fan of hers. I'm not her demo, whatever. But you know what? Wendy Williams will ask the question that people wanted to hear. And she took whatever came back to her. And so does Charlamagne on The Breakfast Club. There are people that are, and he's been attacked before.
Mm.
There are people that have to say things that might be uncomfortable, might have to make uncomfortable topics not only palatable, but Anthony, funny. How about that, Cooper? Sometimes you can make a joke about your dad going through cancer. Now, does that mean that, like, if somebody else's parent is in cancer, they can stand up and punch that comic for trying to deal with the situation the way the comics do through humor?
Right.
I don't understand why we attack the people that have, time after time made very difficult and complex subjects simple, palatable, digestible, and funny to the masses. Like, comics are so important to take this complex subject and break it down into one or two sentences that make sense, kind of funny. Okay, I can deal with that now and keep it moving.
But don't care. Just be a comic and say what you want to say. And if people are going to come after you, that's their problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's comics
Easy
out
to
there that
say
don't.
now.
They just don't care. They don't. It's like, come after me, whatever. Do what you want. So I mean, it depends on what you're saying and how.
Can I ask you guys a question? Because I was thinking about this. Do you think, because Chris Rock has declined to press charges, Coop, and do you think he should, as a signal to the younger generation that you can't put your hands on people? I'm not going to meet you in the back alley. What I am going to do is I'm going to send a law firm to your door Monday morning that's got 4 or 5 scary names attached to it, and we're going to do it that way. Because I'm sure you can argue that lost revenue, humiliation, blah, blah, blah. You can get some money. I think the big man thing to do is say, oh, no, that's okay. I don't need to sue. But I don't know. Am I a person that wants to see another black man run through the criminal justice system? No. But civilly, get your money, player, because he took money from you and he took your dignity from you. And you need to show people that's not okay and that there are consequences and repercussions for you putting your hands on me. Are you kidding me?
I agree with your philosophy. I agree with everything you just said, except for this. Chris Rock got to look into Will Smith's eyes. He saw the crazy coming at him. He saw that he was not in a good place. He was having, whether it was like a mental breakdown, whatever was happening, it was something where he probably said to himself, I don't want to see that again. We didn't look into Will Smith's eyes and see what he was going through. And I wouldn't want to have to poke that bear, because if he's going to punch me at the Oscars, what's he going to do to me privately? What, is he going to hire a hitman?
You got to pay for your actions. You can't have man-on-man violence like that on that type of scale.
That's why I think his Oscar should be taken away. That's why I think the consequences should be his Oscar is taken away. He can no longer be known as Oscar winner Will Smith.
I never, once you laid out the criteria, I agree with you, Coop. There has to be a grave consequence when you commit an act like that. And I do agree it should be taken away. I just, in terms of like him, he should have seen it in his eyes. If you look at the video, he keeps his hands behind his back, because I don't think that he ever, when you have a certain relationship with somebody, if that was a regular audience member that he had never seen before, I think he would have reached for the mic stand or a stool.
He would have been on guard. Yeah.
Right. But if I'm at a party and me and your boyfriend Joe, who's a dear friend of mine, if we're kind of having words and I see him put his drink down and head towards me, I'm not thinking Joe's coming to punch me.
No.
It's like, oh, it's a guy. No, it's it. Yeah, he might be a little mad. I've seen him make that face. I shouldn't have said that about Cooper. But you might not. You're not.
He said worse.
Yeah, somebody that you've known for probably 20 years. That's probably the last thing that I would have expected to happen in the entire world. And I think Chris Rock felt the same way. It'd be like your mom hitting you in the back of the head with a bat at Thanksgiving. Like, where did that come from? I don't think he saw it coming.
No, and then what's the civil suit? Like, how much money you want? 20 million? I got that in my pocket. Will Smith is going to be like, sure, how much money you want? I'll write you a check right now, pussy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't think there's an amount of money that's going to really have an impact on him. I think taking away his Oscar and him no longer being Oscar winner Will Smith that's the impact that we're looking for.
I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. Do you guys? Okay, let's do this. Let's play Cooper Lawrence crisis spin control for the Hollywood elite.
Okay.
You just got a phone call last night. It's Will Smith's people saying,
Yeah.
"Oh shit, we're gonna write you a check with so many zeros in it. It's gonna be offensive to you if you can fix this." What framework to get back in the good graces of the public do you tell Will Smith?
You have to take the responsibility for it and say that you're having a mental breakdown, that it's a mental illness of some kind. It's been coming on for a while. Last Saturday, I was in my car and I almost drove off the cliff because I was like, "What's life worth anymore?" And I've been feeling very depressed. And and then suddenly I'm nominated for an Oscar at the worst moment of my life. You sit down with Oprah or somebody and you say all this and you say that you've broken down and you apologize. You apologize sincerely, not just to Chris Rock, but to anybody that was triggered, anybody that violence has touched their lives, because you realize that you didn't mean to be violent, but you were so in a state that you were lashing out. Like, I think you have to be, the contrition has to be there. You've got to be emotional about it, and you've got to offer us a real explanation that makes sense.
Well, that made sense. I was like, can I hire you when I have my huge F up, which is 100% coming? Anthony, would you do anything? Let me ask you this, Anthony. Who do you sit down with for the not softball interview? Because you can't go underhand pitch softball. You have to go women's college softball with that crazy wind up and then the throw.
Kevin Hart. I think you sit down with Kevin Hart.
Ooh, somebody that's also had like some personal turmoil, turned it around. Do you sit down with
kind
him
of
or
a
do
talk
you sit down
show.
with all three of you guys?
Maybe all three, but I think it's too late because Will did his acceptance speech and didn't apologize to Chris Rock.
He was still in that moment, though.
I know he had this chance, though. If he would have said, "I apologize to everybody and all my people, fellow winners, and Chris Rock, I want to say I'm sorry," that would have started it. But I think it's too late.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because a lot of people don't get that second chance in the moment with all those people there, because you can give your apology on Twitter after the events are over and you've had a chance to cool down. But some people don't check their Twitter. Some people, they'll never see that you apologize. But if he had taken that moment right there to begin the process, Coop, that you're talking about, that would have been a great, like, almost like you're kicking off a presidential campaign. That's your Obama speech at the DNC, to just be like, "Hey, that was a huge mess up." And then you're right. This week, you get Gayle King on the phone or Kevin Hart, like, "Hey, can we do it? Do a red table talk with all three of y'all."
Yeah.
And
but he wasn't there yet. This had just happened. He was still in that place. He was still in that. I mean, if we're talking about mental illness, let's say, I mean, I don't know what's going on in his life, but I'm just spitballing here. So if it is mental illness, you're not suddenly not mentally ill 10 minutes later because you won an Oscar. I mean, you're still, you're still struggling with whatever it is you're struggling. And you were right. What you said earlier, this is it's like a wedding. It's the most emotional night possible.
My last question is just something I've been thinking about myself. Is I was listening to a podcast where they had she's a mental health specialist, and they were asking her.
Esther Perel?
It was not. She was on the Shan Boudram pod, and she was asking what percentage of Americans have a mental health issue that could affect them in the bedroom, and the expert said 100%. And I've talked to people that have used, and before I met my girl, people that have used all the dating apps, and to a person, a lot of them have said it really highlighted to me the mental health issues that our country and that our world is dealing with. And I think that there's a lot more people than we care to even think that really Will's actions resonated with them. Impulsive, angry. I don't know if he was drinking, but his eyes looked like he had a few, not a ton, but it only takes two really before you're kind of a different person. And I just, I wonder if more than anything, he just highlighted that everyone is struggling with mental health on an incredible. We just had Emmanuel Acho on our show, and he was talking about mental health, and like he interviewed Lil Wayne, and Lil Wayne, tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
I named my LLC after a Lil Wayne song, and so like that's embarrassing, but it's a fact, and I stand by it. And
I love that.
It's just all these people that you think that are at the top are struggling just as much as somebody that lost their job and can't find another one. We, as a culture, refuse to realize that mental health issues, you can argue our president was a narcissist. And does that make him a bad person? No, it makes him like a lot of people that I've known that have struggled with that issue. And so the fact that we don't ever address it, but it was the first thing you spoke about on the podcast, tells you how pervasive it is.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the undiagnosed really concern me, and the unmedicated really concern me, versus the people. And the thing is, the stigma's off. I mean, everyone's talking about mental illness in a very healthy way now. And, at least, on joke Twitter, where I always am, people are just like, yeah, my therapist said, or me as a therapist, and they have some joke, or today I had so much anxiety, so I took this many pills. Like everyone just makes jokes about it and talks about it so naturally. Like it's just a regular, like I had a bagel this morning and then I had my Prozac or whatever else is, my benzodiazepine, whatever it is that people take. So, you know what I mean? So it seems like it's pretty regular. So there's no stigma on it. But then there's the Kanyes of the world, I think that's what ended his marriage. Kanye was diagnosed. They knew it was wrong with him. He just was like, I'm not as creative when I'm on my medication. Yeah. Yes, but you're also intolerable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's as somebody that's grown up with somebody that's dealt with bipolar situations and schizoaffective disorder. It's a lifelong struggle. And a lot of times, what's really sad is like when we see on the news, some guy breaks into a Burger King when it's closed and the cops have to shoot him and he's naked. And it's kind of a story that's put out there. It's kind of like, well, look at this, whatever. Look at this guy.
Right.
I see somebody's brother that's off his meds.
Right.
Because I've been there. And it's not a story that I feel like should be covered like that, but it always is. And I think that for a lot of people that lived in that neighborhood, in this imaginary neighborhood with this imaginary guy that broke in this imaginary Burger King, they're like, oh yeah, I know that kid. That's a person to me. That's so-and-so's kid, and he's just struggling right now. I think a lot of people, even if they don't have all the fancy words that we have like, oh, Anthony, he's had, how he gets. Like, that's like our auntie's way of saying, he has mental health issues that sometimes cause him to act erratically, but our aunts just go, well, we love Cooper, and we form a circle around her. We don't let her go anywhere. Like, it's just like we take the fancy terms out, and that's all it is. It's like, oh, we love them. We'll make sure they say okay, or at least try. Right. So I think like if it is a mental health issue, which you can make that assumption, not me. You're right.
I don't know. I can't diagnose him. I'm just saying, that's sort of all I can do is look at the behavior and look at the research. And I know that behavior is linked to different mental disorders. And even if it's just acute, even if it's just something that's happening right now because he's under more pressure than he normally is, because his relationship is out there, because he's trying to revive his career and he did this film. And listen, there's a lot of actors out there. Think about his speech, some of the things he said in his speech. There's a lot of actors out there that play these roles and they stay with them. They don't leave it on the cutting room floor. They don't leave it on the in the studio. So on some level, he may still be Richard Williams, who was a fucking prick for all intents and purposes.
He said that in his speech. I mean,
that's what I mean.
It's a great pickup from you. I never put that together. And as you were talking, I was like, isn't that why Daniel Day-Lewis said he retired? Is like he couldn't walk away. He would so immerse himself in these characters that it was tearing him up. And, that makes some sense. It's weird that it would happen to him kind of at this stage of his career.
Well, let me ask you a question. So is that behavior, getting up and punching somebody, does that feel like something Richard Williams would do or Will Smith would do?
Richard Williams.
Right, because he has a history of domestic abuse and violence.
Yeah.
And Will Smith lived in that head deeply for a long time. And he's not been, and I'm not making excuses for him. It's wrong. It's 100% wrong. I still say he should lose his Oscar. Everything he did was 100% wrong. He should go on the apology tour. But I'm just trying to understand it. And I think as an actor who immersed himself in a role, I think that he went too far, too deep. He's in the Matrix.